Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I woke up and I was thinking about something that I thought was interesting, and so I sat down and I wrote a little blog post about it, and I was like, you know what, I gotta do a video about this because I think it's important. So there's a lot of talk about consent these days, and there's the metoo movement, and there's all these things, and I really don't understand all the nuances and all the ins and outs of everything involved in it, truly. I haven't really done research on these things very much, just because I've been researching other things, other things that for me in my current life are more relevant to me. So this word consent has been thrown around a lot in recent times and in the news and all of that. And so I've been thinking about it, and, I have a son who's 2. And so I've been thinking about how and when do you start teaching a kid about consent and their body, and how do you keep a kid safe, in the current environment and society, with all the different people. And anyway, so I've been thinking about this, and so then over the weekend we were with some extended family who we've never met before, and something happened, and it finally I had this aha moment on it. Okay, so some of my friends with older children, they've talked about teaching their kids consent, and they've talked about how important it is that you teach kids at a young age to respect people's bodies. And I agree with that, but I never really got into it because I was I don't, whatever. It didn't impact me, so I just acknowledged and moved on. So over the weekend, we were at this family thing with some extended family, and this older male family member, he came up to my son and he was trying to be friendly with him, and he picked him up, which surprised my son, because usually people who don't know him don't pick him up. And he put him on his lap and he started tickling him, and my son was, squirming and obviously uncomfortable with what was going on and with the interaction. And I was just about to step in. It happened so quickly. It didn't, I didn't jump in probably as quick as I should have, but it was just, it was a 3-second interaction or whatever. And then I realized afterwards the importance of, not allowing those sorts of interactions with a child. Because the thing is what you're teaching a child by enforcing your own physical contact on them is that there's certain social situations where you may have to, touch someone else's body in a way that makes you uncomfortable, but you're small, so you don't really have a say in it. And so you just need to do it to be polite. That's literally the lesson a kid will learn if this is done over and over and over, right? It's in order to be polite, you have to let these family members touch your body even if it makes you uncomfortable and you don't like it. And so anyway, this was my aha moment, right? Was wow, and I have to advocate for him. And I will do that. But this was the first moment where it became something that impacted me, in my immediate life. And now I'm starting to understand better, the first step in teaching consent to a child is teaching them consent over their own person, right? Not how it applies to other people necessarily, because they're not going around, enforcing themselves at 2 years old, aggressively on other people. He does sometimes hit people and whatever, and we're working on that. But the thing is that if he's taught that his body is his and it can't be touched and grabbed and manipulated in ways that he doesn't like, he's also going to know that other people's bodies belong to them and are not to be, touched and messed with and manipulated in ways that they don't like, right? And even pointing out, if he does start to get aggressive with other people's bodies, being hey, you wouldn't like it, if that was done to you, et cetera, right? This concept of consent and how do we teach it to our children, and when is the right time, and what age is appropriate. Like, I'm not even talking about sex. It literally doesn't have anything to do with sex. It has to do with like just normal social physical contact, right? And, you know, each parent and child has to define like what they're comfortable with. You know, when I was a kid, I was comfortable, you know, hugging people, even if I didn't really know them, you know, but there were certainly times when I was picked up or tickled or, you know, physical contact was enforced that I wasn't comfortable with. And I was so shy that I didn't really stand up for myself in regards to that. And my parents were pretty good about like, you know, hey, don't do that or whatever. And it doesn't take like being mean or being weird in order to like stop that interaction. So anyway, after this interaction over the weekend, then we got home. There wasn't like a really good time to like step aside with my husband and talk about it at that time, you know, and there was never a point where like Henry was like out of my view. Henry's my 2-year-old. So it wasn't like an immediate dire situation to need to like handle, right? But then afterwards we got home and I brought it up to my husband. I said, hey, did you know, because he was right there. Did you observe that interaction? And Henry was obviously uncomfortable. And he goes, yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. And I said to him, look, now this might be a little extreme, what I'm about to say, but I consider it essentially like if you continue to enforce yourself on my child, even though they are obviously uncomfortable with that interaction, I consider it to be like essentially like grooming or like predatory towards children and really not okay, you know? And it's not fair to expect that because a child is smaller than you, that they will submit their body to you, even if it's just for a hug or a tickle. Like they, you know, their body is theirs and should be respected as such. And I'm sure I'm gonna get hate on this video for posting it this way and for saying what I have to say, but like I can't not say it. I said to my husband, you know, it seems to me that it's essentially, you know, a predatory action towards our kid. And my husband's eyes got big and you could see him like, wow, the action that we observed could have been observed as like, oh, that's innocent enough, you know, and like whatever. In the intention, there didn't seem to be any like malice about it. It just seemed to be like a social norm from, you know, 50 years ago. Because I think these days you don't see that as much. You see people more respecting the physical bodies of, especially of other people's children. Like it's not often you'll see people like pick up other people's children or whatever, who they haven't interacted with and who aren't comfortable with that. You know, me and my husband discussed it and I said, look, in the future, if that happens, because I'm not always the one there with my kids, sometimes it's my husband, right? So I knew we needed to be united as far as how we present ourselves on this. You know, it's not the last time that anyone's gonna try and like enforce a hug or a kiss or whatever on my kid when he doesn't want it. So basically, I think the first thing to say is, hey, my kid looks very uncomfortable. Why don't you let him go? You know, like, and then if it persists, or depending on the situation, if that's not an appropriate thing to say, you go, look, we don't enforce physical contact on our children. If our kid is uncomfortable, then he doesn't need to have physical contact with you at this time. Or, you know, our kid is obviously nervous or not familiar enough with you, and so please do not enforce physical contact on him, or something like that. Something where, you know, you need to be direct enough that people get that you're not joking. You know, you need to say what you have to say, but also in a way that's not accusatory, because I think the majority of people aren't intending to prey on our children. And I don't think that most people, that the thought even crosses their mind. I think they're just like, oh, what a cute kid. I would love to snuggle them, and it's just like they almost can't help themselves, and they just need to learn to help themselves and learn to like chill a little bit, because decency and propriety and respect all apply to children, even though like they're cute and they're little. They're not like little pets, they're little people. So anyway, I had to say my 2 cents on it just because of what had just happened, and it was fresh in my mind. And like I'm not trying to attack that behavior or say that people who have done that in the past are like horrible people. I'm not trying to like make anyone feel guilty. I just it's a new awareness for me, and I wanted to express it in a way that might help other people, and especially other parents, understand, I've had this new realization. I thought other parents might get something out of it. So if you have a similar story or a similar interaction, or if you agree or if you disagree, feel free to leave me a comment below. I love reading your guys' comments, and I'm gonna leave links to all my other social media below, so feel free to come hang out with me on any of this.